Hello guys, and welcome back to another video on the JAT15 channel. Today, we're once again diving into the issues with Blitz and how it continues to let us down. But instead of just pointing out the problems, we'll compare it to two other games that successfully foster positive community engagement. Hopefully, this will highlight just how far behind wargaming really is, and while change might be unlikely, maybe, just maybe, they'll start engaging with their community the way they should. Community contributors and content creators are in the best position to relay player concerns and suggestions to Wargaming through the community manager. However, as we all know, these efforts often lead nowhere, no matter how hard we push for change. And it's not just about criticism. We offer solutions, and we give credit when Wargaming actually gets something right. Yet, most of the time, as seen with the login and turret bugs, they take far too long to fix even the most basic issues. Take monetization, for example. In past videos, I've not only criticized the current model, but also suggested ways to make the game more accessible for everyone. Some of the solutions we ask for aren't even difficult to implement, like a simple toggle button for bots in random battles, a feature I've suggested multiple times along with many others in the community. Yet, these basic quality of life improvements are ignored. To reinforce this point, I asked some former community contributors what their biggest gameplay change was. Bob and Hiromi couldn't name a single meaningful change they had influenced. Sly, despite spending hours upon hours writing detailed proposals for improvements and collecting data, could only point to a few balancing changes. In Bob's recent video about monetization, he raised an important question. Are CCs and content creators just here to support Blitz's transactions? Before going any further, no. Content creators are not guilty of supporting Wargaming's monetization. We make content to entertain, inform, and share our opinions. But let's be honest, are we just another cog in their money-making machine while Wargaming continues to ignore our concerns? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Over the years, it has become clear that Wargaming is nothing more than a greedy, unethical company, milking both the player base with increasing macro transactions and the creators who provide free promotion. At this point, can we even call them community contributors anymore? With so little input into actual game changes, they might as well be called community creators, because their role has nothing to do with the community anymore, and that's exactly how Wargaming wants it. Now let's look at a game that actually values its content creators, Metal Storm. I've been playing it for just a week, and I'm impressed enough to buy the Flight Pass. Why? Because the developers actively collaborate with their content creators to improve the game and help new players. They involve creators in making informative videos covering both basic mechanics and advanced strategies. One of these creators is Pigbay, a former Blitz CC, who is now in an environment where he can actually support a game he enjoys. And unlike Blitz, where Wargaming barely acknowledges creators, the Metalstorm devs regularly give shoutouts. They even hosted a content creator tournament and played against their own content creators in custom matches on stream. That's real community engagement. Meanwhile, the Blitz team is too busy hiding behind language barriers to make any substantial changes, even when the entire community is screaming for them. Not all requests for changes and bug reports come from community contributors. The main Discord server has an entire section for game feedback, where players report issues and suggest improvements. Yet, Wargaming ignores most of these reports, including major ones, only responding to just enough of them to appear engaged. Take my island bug reports from over 2 years ago, still unfixed. And to prove just how oblivious the Blitz team really is, they even asked for the map name on one of my reports despite me clearly stating it. It's hard to see this as anything but sheer laziness. To make matters worse, they recently asked for bot behavior footage, a request that came after 7 years of bot bugs and shenanigans. Their excuses? Language barriers and difficulty identifying the issues, which honestly just proves that the Blitz devs don't even play or test their own game. And let's not ignore the timing of this request. It was made on January the 7th, just a week after the price hike disaster. To me, it's nothing more than a PR stunt to win back the player base. Newsflash, Wargaming, it's not working. The devs rarely seek out player feedback. Instead, community contributors and players are left to push for changes themselves, creating a well-known feeling of one-way traffic. And when Wargaming does send out surveys, they're off-topic and irrelevant. In my Blitz anniversary video, I pointed out how their latest survey completely missed the mark yet again. It's clear they have no idea what's actually happening in their own game. Now, let's compare Blitz to another game, Manor Lords, a medieval city builder. Unlike Wargaming, Manor Lords' solo developer, Slavic Magic, is laser focused on community feedback. His latest update massively improved the game, fixing bugs, refining gameplay, adding new features, and even upgrading the entire game engine. And this isn't a one-off improvement. He's consistently listening to players and rolling out updates that enhance the experience. The best part? He's doing all of this alone. A single, passionate developer has managed to create a game with a brighter future than Blitz, all while still in early access. Meanwhile, Wargaming, a massive company with millions in revenue, can't even fix simple bugs. That alone speaks volumes. As I mentioned earlier, the Blitz developers don't play or test their own game, which leads to a shocking level of cluelessness. They constantly make mistakes such as putting the wrong commanders in crates because they don't understand their own mechanics. They remain completely unaware of the game's core issues, and every update or event launch is plagued with bugs and insane pricings. Since the dev team doesn't engage with the player base except for the community manager, they have zero understanding of our frustration or the fact that we actually really care about the game's future. They don't see the impact of their decisions firsthand, and as a result, they continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. I wouldn't be surprised if the community manager constantly gets overruled by the rest of the dev team due to their complete lack of understanding. The community manager is supposed to be the bridge between players and the developers, yet it feels like they're just shouting into the void. Even when feedback is gathered and passed on, nothing changes because the devs either don't care or don't understand the problems well enough to act on them. This explains why we see the same issues persist for years and why even simple fixes go ignored despite repeated requests. It's not just incompetence, it's a refusal to listen, and at some point, you have to wonder if the community manager is just as frustrated as we are. Unlike the Blitz development team, the Metalstorm devs actually play their game. This allows them to experience issues firsthand and build a genuine connection with the game and its community. As I mentioned earlier, they even held a content creator tournament and played against content creators, actively involving themselves in the community. This kind of interaction fosters trust and ensures that the game is moving in the right direction. I understand that most developers don't want to play the game they code for all day because it may seem like a chore. However, at the very least, they should engage more with the community and communicate properly with content creators and community contributors. That way, they could actually build an understanding of how the game functions instead of continuing with the clueless, haphazard approach. And please, for the love of God, properly test your game. The half-baked testing is obvious when every update and event is riddled with problems. Wargaming's responses, or rather their lack of meaningful responses, are a huge part of the problem. I talked about this in my video on Blitz reviews, which if you haven't seen yet, I highly recommend checking out. As I mentioned there, Wargaming's replies seem to be more about placating the community rather than actually addressing concerns. They claim to be transparent, but when major changes happen, like the price hike, they go completely silent. Instead of acknowledging the issue, they rely on bot-generated responses to reviews, creating zero connection between developers and the player base. This just further highlights how out of touch they are with the state of their own game. Take their response on February 22nd, a full 3 weeks late after the price increases. Not only was it ridiculously delayed, but they didn't even mention the price hike at all. Instead, they tried to shift the conversation by talking about unrelated issues. This kind of deflection is a pattern with them. Once again, they promised big plans for the game, but we all know that's just an empty statement. nothing is going to change. And being sick is not an excuse for taking that long to respond. There are multiple Wargaming staff members in the server who could have made an announcement, yet no one did. At this point, I have to wonder if this was even a response or just a cover up attempt, throwing out vague promises of lots of improvements to try and quiet the outrage. The fact that I even had to question this just proves how little trust the community has left in wargaming, and let's be real, they've earned that distrust. And then there's the issue of compensation, or rather the complete joke that is their compensation system. The so-called compensation for 7.4 and the login bug issues was downright unacceptable, as I mentioned in my collab with Bob. Many players never even received compensation for the supership blunder, and when Valk actually tried to compensate one of my friends, only half of what he was owed by the way, he still got in trouble for it. Imagine that. A Blitz dev member getting in trouble for actually doing right by the players. On top of that, several players, including myself, spent free experience to buy supership uses for the free XP conversion, only to never receive what we paid for. To this day, we still haven't gotten our rewards. Do they realize how much XP and silver we spent just to get completely scammed? And of course, their response? We're collecting data on the issue. That was over a month ago. The truth is, they're not collecting anything. They just hope we forget and or give up. Meanwhile, Manor Lords, a game developed by a single person, Cybec Magic, has managed to keep players updated on every issue with the game, communicating openly and apologizing when necessary. That's one guy doing a better job than an entire wargaming development team. Then there's Metalstorm. Anytime they've had issues with their game, they've not only acknowledged them quickly, but have also compensated players fairly. That's how you build trust with your community. You admit mistakes, fix them, and make things right. Meanwhile, the Blitz development team is too busy collecting data and citing language barriers as an excuse for why they can't compensate players properly. And even when they do, because they don't understand their own game, the compensation is always too little compared to the damage they've caused. At the end of the day, Wargaming's approach to Blitz is nothing short of a disaster. They don't test their own game, they don't listen to the community, and the responses are either non existent or completely out of touch. Instead of fixing long standing issues, they focus on monetization schemes and ignore player feedback, which only deepens the disconnect. Other developers, both small and large, have shown that it's entirely possible to engage with the community, address issues, and create a game that players trust and enjoy. But Wargaming refuses to do that. Unless they dramatically change their approach, starting with actually properly testing updates and engaging with the player base in a meaningful way, things will continue to get worse, and at some point, even the most loyal players will have had enough. At the end of the day, we don't just want Blitz to be better, we need it to be better. The player base deserves more than half-baked updates, overpriced content, and a dev team that ignores the community. If Wargaming doesn't step up, they're going to lose the very people who have kept this game alive for so long. Please, Wargaming, understand that you have a player base which has so much passion for this game. It's my favorite game and most played game, and the community and myself want to see it flourish. The question is, will you listen before it's too late? This video, like others, will be sent to our community manager, Maddie, in which I pray something comes out of it, but I don't hold high hopes. Thanks for listening and watching today's video. JT15, out.